Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Spanning the Need. On tonight's episode, we're talking sports. Tonight, we'll talk about the latest news on opening up schools, fall sports, and high school, as well as college. With me tonight is sports anchor from Channel 21, WFMJ, Dana Balash, and longtime YSU SID sports contributor. This guy's got a long resume of 43 years, Greg Gulas. Guys, thank you for joining me tonight.
Happy to be here, Tony.
Thanks for having me.
So, and later we'll have a variety of other guests that we'll talk about a variety of stuff from conferences to athletic directors to superintendents. So, everyone, buckle your seats. We're going for a ride tonight. So, let's get started. So, Dana and Greg, there has been so much talk about sports, no sports. What is the updates from what you're hearing on sports coming in the fall for high school?
Well, Tony, it's really, we have got no updates. We know that there are no scrimmages allowed. We know that, the non-contact sports of golf, cross country are allowed to start, and tennis, girls tennis are allowed to start. And official practice for all these sports starts Saturday, August 1st. But, after that, really, there's no plan. And I think that's kind of disappointing for a lot of coaches across the state, especially here in the Mahoning Valley. But certainly I think they were looking for some direction, and I think that's what a lot of people want. They just want direction. What is the plan? Is there a plan? Is the season going to start on time? Is it going to be delayed, or is there not going to be a season? And I think that's the biggest frustration that I've heard from a lot of coaches and administrators.
And Dana, were you disappointed today that the governor didn't even address that?
Well, and there was a lot of speculation that was going to be addressed today, and the lieutenant governor hasn't been there the last couple of briefings, and the lieutenant governor really has handled a lot of the sports end of it. So I think a lot of coaches and administrators were anticipating something coming today from Governor DeWine just on, what direction they were going to go, because with practice starting on Saturday. So I think there was a lot of disappointment across the state. I talked to a couple of administrators shortly after the governor was done, and they expressed their frustration, like, okay, now we have to go another week where practice will officially start, and they're just looking for direction, guys. I don't think most administrators and most coaches that I've talked to I don't think they mind what the decision is. They just want to know what direction they're going to go into.
And I agree with that. Now, after the Vindicator went down, coming up on a year now, August 31st, I moved over to the Boardman News, and as you very well know, John Darnell, he's in limbo right now, and his biggest concern is he does a very nice football preview, as you have seen in the Boardman News. He has no idea if the season's going to go on now. The Vindicator covered everybody. Now, with the Boardman News, they only covered the Cardinal Mooney High School, Boardman High School, and YSU, and rightfully so. But he has ads he has to sell. We have articles to write. Have no idea if, in fact, it's going to happen. So what angle do you attack? You really don't know.
Well, and I think we look at what the communication was from the OHSA just a few days ago that canceled all scrimmages basically for specific sports, any contact sports, including football. So that puts almost a temptation of, if we're not going to be able to scrimmage, how are we going to be able to play our games in the future?
That's a good point.
Well, I also think, Tony, that the reason that was put into play, that they suspended the scrimmages, was because when practice starts on Saturday for soccer and volleyball, right away they're allowed to scrimmage. I mean, they're allowed to hold scrimmages. So I think it was more for that and to suspend the scrimmages. So if a volleyball team was coming or a soccer team, there was not that interaction. I mean, people say there could be more contact in soccer than in football, but I think that's why it was put in, because these non-contact sports can still scrimmage, and you're bringing people together, and obviously that's what the Department of Health, that's what the governor wants to avoid, is having people congregate and be together.
And Dana and Tony, I think the biggest disappointment, as we lost a lot of time in the spring, there isn't much going on in the summer that is permitted. But now you're coming into the fall. What's going to happen? I feel terrible for these student athletes that are seniors. There's no such thing as a redshirt year in high school. So a lot of them are going to lose out on having been seen and maybe offered a scholarship or the opportunity to get a partial scholarship. That's the part I feel worst about.
And also, I think, there was some speculation and some talk of flipping the seasons. And, I think in the early going, if they were really considering that and looking at that, it would have been done already. You're already at the end of July. Seasons start in a couple of weeks for golf and for tennis. I think there's golf matches, as a matter of fact, next week. So you can't flip the season. So I think the best case scenario, at least in my opinion, for football is, look, shut everything down. Starting tomorrow, shut everything down. Have the players come back the week of September 18th. The Coaches Association has asked for 3 weeks of preparation. You come back the week of September 18th. If you're able to come back, if you're able to play games, you play games 5, 6, 7, or 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. You move the playoffs back 1 week. You add a 6th game in there. Teams that make the playoffs go to the playoffs. Teams that don't make the playoffs, you still have 5 weeks to play 4 games to reach your 10. That way it gives the kids a chance. But the way we're going now with the Ohio High School Athletic Association, and I don't know how much say they have in the matter. This all rests on the governor and the Department of Health. But I think what they need to do is just say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to stick with it. And we're going to give these kids an opportunity. Not to say it's a definitive opportunity, but at least it's a chance. And I think if they come out with a plan like that, then I would think, okay, you know what? They have an opportunity.
And don't think that the big wigs aren't looking at Major League Baseball right now. The Marlins, what's happening there, who's testing positive, who's out of the bubble, who's in the bubble with the NBA. This is something. And I'm talking about everybody in all 50 states.
Well, and I talked to several people from actually the NBA. They just came out with an announcement that no one has tested positive right now, which that's pretty good when you can find them all in the one area and you control it. But with Major League Baseball, you're going from park to park, and especially you think the Yankees want to go to that visiting locker room that the Marlins were in. So, and to get back to your point about moving the season around a little bit, delaying it. In the past, I talked briefly with some past athletic directors and some coaches that one of the plans was to move football to the spring, which it sounds all good, but then what do you do about fall of the following year? What do you do about you can't put a student athlete, they're not fully grown, they're not fully weightlifting and everything, to go right back into football again over the summer.
Well, I'd like to get John Mang's take on that, because he's the assigner. He is also a league commissioner. And Dana, as you and I have talked over the past couple of weeks when all this was unraveling, you move it to the spring, guess what? Your playoffs will be done end of June, early July. Now you're going to move into the next season that's in the fall.
And I think the bigger question is, and again, everyone has good ideas. There's ideas tossed around, but you got to think this thing all the way through, and the transition back to the spring. The other question is, if you have an athlete who's already verbally committed to a university, the early signing period is in December. So if that student athlete signs, and is that school going to want him to play high school football? Will he want to play high school football? Some of these student athletes sign, they graduate early, they're at the college, in January. So I just think there were too many unanswered questions when it came to flipping the seasons. And again, when this came out and when this thing started back in March, if they were going to do it, I felt it had to be done early enough to plan. The baseball people, the softball people probably weren't going to be too happy if you swapped the seasons, because again, those athletes lost the spring, and now you're asking them to possibly sacrifice, the fall if they would move it. So I think the Ohio High School Athletic Association did a great job of deciding not to flip it, and I hope that would stay the case if not to flip it. I can't see how they could flip it now. And because, the baseball and softball lost the spring, and the way things are going, they probably would lose, the fall as well. Now, with that being said, baseball and softball can be played now under the restrictions, but let's face it, I've gone to past, facilities and so on and so forth, and no one is socially distancing, at places that I've seen. And so it's tough. It's a tough situation. I wouldn't want to make the decision.
And what do you think, Dana, you've been around a long time, Greg, as well. You want to play sports. Student athletes love what they do. You talk about no scrimmages, no contact. Well, they're going to be practicing. So they're going to be around their own players, hopefully being tested, hopefully being confined. What are some of the challenges to bring those sports to be competitive in contact?
Well, I think you said it, Tony, where it's going to come to testing. And if student athletes are required to be tested, as they are now under the current rules, guidelines, protocols, whatever you want to say it, who's going to pay for these tests? Schools can't afford to pay for these tests. You know, football is a big revenue sport for a lot of schools for all their sports. So if fans are limited, or if there's no fans at all, it's very hard for schools to, play games, to bring in revenue, but you're going to be paying out. You're going to be paying your game day operations. You're going to be paying your officials. You're going to be paying your timekeeper and announcer and all that. So I think there's a lot of questions that administrators can't answer because they don't have that direction. They don't have that plan.
And I think we've talked briefly, and I talked to a lot of people. Is they just want direction, and I think that's what's making a lot of administrators, athletic directors, like going crazy right now because they want answers. How you tell me what you want us to do, because you're at the pivot of the governor.
Well, you've got a guest right there right now that can probably help answer some of the stuff about scrimmages and that. And
exactly. Let's bring him on. John.
Good evening to you.
We have John Mang. He's the commissioner, assigner of the Mahoning Valley Athletic Conference. John, thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and it's becoming common have to talk to everybody online anymore. It seems like it's a special treat when you do go face to face with people with sports, as far as like Mahoning Valley Athletic Conference. I know we've had a number of Zoom meetings, and the state has Zoom meetings, and the assigners had Northeast Ohio assigners. We've had meetings, but there's nothing like face to face. But this is the best we can do. But the biggest thing the one thing I've said at every meeting that I attend online is, when you have more questions than answers, you have issues, and that's exactly where we stand right now.
Well put.
We just don't have enough answers, and we're at the mercy of our governor and our OSSA staff, who, for all the hits they take and everything, they're doing the best they can, and they're doing what's best for our student athletes. And I just hope that that stays in their minds when any of these decisions are made in the next week or two with our fall sports, because these kids and coaches have put so much time and effort into trying to get ready for the fall. And if there's a way possible, I'm sure a safe way, that I think in Ohio we may have some sports. I don't know if it'll be a full schedule, but we'll have a schedule. I'm trying to be optimistic.
Well, and I think that brings up a good point. You're a commissioner of a high school league, but you're also an assigner. So I can only imagine what that looks like when it comes to either switching up schedules or even looking at potential games and contests over the next 6 months. How has the league been handling everything going on? What are some preparations that you guys have been put in, some of the talks that you've been looking at?
Well, as far as right now, everybody is geared to start this fall. I don't know, Greg, if you're talking about changing the seasons. That would have to come down the road. But I think we all learned a lesson this past spring with high school baseball and softball and the other spring sports. We try to be proactive, and I know I moved schedules from March until the 1st of May. I think we're going to have an extended season. If you remember, they were talking about letting us go into June, and then everything was canceled. So I think right now it's more of a wait-and-see attitude. And nobody said that we're not going to play other than the fall, but very little discussion, I know, in our league about what if we do play in the fall, because we'll get it done somehow. And, one thing about sports, you put enough good heads together and you'll come up with a pretty good answer. But right now we're hoping to play this fall. There's just a lot of preparation that there's some gray areas on how to handle it. There's been a lot of guidelines that came down from this OHSA and from the governor's office, but there's still a lot of things out there as a league, which, matter of fact, next week I have Kevin O'Donnell, who's the superintendent McDonald. He's our league administrator for this coming 2021 season. He picked a good year to have it, but we're going to, yeah, I hope he's listening. I try to put a plug in for him, but the big thing is the things where the general public and you don't think about, like, what if, I give you some examples. What if we do not allow our bands or our cheerleaders to go on the road for road games, their away games? Then it was suggested, okay, well, if that would come to be, okay, we'll have to do something maybe for the band members and the cheerleaders to be able to attend a game and have a pass gate for them or something to give to them if that would happen. And I'm not saying it is, but it's on the plate. And I think every school district in Ohio is thinking the same thing because of the social distancing and the amount of buses they would need for bands and cheerleaders. But then, after we kicked that around, and I was a good listener when you're a superintendent. If you want to survive, you listen to your superintendents because they really are concerned about not only their school districts, but the league that they're involved in. And believe me, they're all top notch. I mean, I would gladly have any of my kids, if they were at the age of being in school, to attend any of the schools in my league. But the big thing is now it comes up, well, we got to worry about spacing in our stadiums and how many people can we fit. You can't afford to have there's not going to be any pre-sale. There's so many different things that are involved with just putting on the game itself behind the screen, behind the line, where people don't think about it, like your ticket takers. What do you do? Are you going to have a concession stand? Are you going to bring in fair food? Are you going to have the officials? I've already attended a few online meetings and talked to all the secretaries that I get officials from about 4 different counties. And I told them I think it's going to be a very possible that you come dressed to the games. And at halftime, we'll have something set up where you got your social distancing because the half times are going to be cut, I think, to 10 or 12 minutes, right, Dana?
That's right, John. That's what they're saying, yes.
So, I mean, it's going to be a shorter, abbreviated one. And that's another thing about maybe not having bands come because of the short halftime. But then the Coaches Association come up with so many good ideas, and I'm sure that some of them will be picked up and hopefully drafted by the OHSA. Pavansky and being president, he just did a great job there. But, there's just so many good people or so many knowledgeable people involved in this that I just feel that the biggest fear we have is the virus itself. I mean, if it spikes, there's not much anybody can do. And that's what I'm concerned about right now.
Sean, have you heard from your memberships as far as the officials? Is there any reluctancy by those guys, some of the ones who may be up there in age a little bit?
I can tell you from spring sports to begin with, in baseball and softball, I probably had 6 to 8 umpires that called me immediately when this virus came around, and they were worried about their family members, maybe them bringing it home from the baseball field or softball field, or if they're not in great health, they were worried about being infected by this virus. And yes, it's starting, and actually in football, I had a few calls, officials, and then I haven't seen it in black and white, but I was told with Dana, I was listening to you talk about the testing part of it, and you're 100% right. One of the schools in my league talked about, they came up with a ballpark figure for their kids to be tested would be about $250,000 if they get tested every week. So it's not a couple pennies, And then also the officials, there was talk with the OSSA, and I didn't see it in black and white, so I can't confirm it, but they were saying the officials got to be tested every 2 weeks. And I heard that the first testing would be on the OSSA. And you know what? There's a rumor mill out there, but I'm telling you what I heard from good people. And once again, too, the Northeast board that we have, we're very fortunate, too. A lot of good people there with a lot of wisdom. But a lot of officials said, if you really add the numbers up for them to officiate a 10-week schedule, 5 tests, and if they had to pay for themselves, I mean, even though they're all in it for the fun and the sport of it and for the kids, but is it feasible for them to continue to officiating. I mean, it was just there would be a high price tag for that, so that has to be taken care of. And Dana, you mentioned that too about them getting funding the schools for testing, and that's about the only way they can pull it off, But you hear all these war stories. I mean, Lowville, we had a football player that one or two of his siblings came down with the virus, and precautionary, they shut down the football. I mean, they're very precautionary, and they did the right thing. And Champion, the same deal. An outside non-athlete, I believe it was involved in it or whatever. So it's not always the athletes, and you can't keep them in a bubble, so to speak. But if you ever went to a morning session, what they go through to have these kids participate, you're talking a mammoth job. And I'll tell you what, hats off to every coach in the area and athletic director and administrator, because everybody's involved. I'll tell you, it's like fighting a war,
And John, and again, you put the nail on the head. If someone, a family member of an athlete, is comes in contact and that player is shut down. I mean, school districts are shutting down the system now. I mean, I would assume that trend would continue in the regular season if there is a regular season. And then it gets everything all jumbled up, because if you have Team X that, has a player, okay, the superintendent is shutting it down, so they're going to be shut down for at least a week, maybe two. Then the schedule and I think that's where the state has to look into this and say, okay, what do we do and how are we going to handle this?
For sure. I mean, right now in your practice sessions, they have the pods where you have 6, 8, 10 kids. All depends how you break them up, but those would be the only ones that would be confined if there was a virus that came down, somebody tested positive. But when you got the whole team together playing another team, I mean, we saw it in Major League Baseball, what they do. They shut down for a week, But what I'm saying is there's a lot behind it, more than just the virus itself. But like when you get involved with members of a family and you have student athletes playing, every school is, so to speak, they're responsible to do the best they can with all the guidelines that come down. And if somebody is positive, or a family member, like you said, or a friend or somebody involved, I mean, it would be, I mean, there's no way in the world that you can just duck it and put it underneath behind a door or something. You have to turn it in, and you have to acknowledge it. And every school district I know, they're all proactive, and the last thing they want to see is an epidemic come, or one game or something, a bunch of people come down infected and that. But there's a lot of things they're doing, and as far as the playing field, and Dana, you're aware of it. They've stretched the field out from the coaching box and the players' boxes from the 10-yard line to the 10-yard line. So that gives them 80 yards that the players themselves can stretch out and have possibly the 6-foot distancing. The officials have talked about working the wingmen on the sides. They're talking about working on the field more to keep their 6-foot distancing from the sideline. Right now, as far as I know, the fall sports that I'm involved with, the football officials, it's optional if you want to wear a mask. They moved the umpire's position to another spot of the field. Football itself will not be touched by the officials. It will be taken back to the huddles with the center, like it was done 100 years ago when I was young. But and they bring it out, and there will be a beanbag out there. Greg Gulas remembers all this. They'll spot the ball, and then they'll center it. They have a way of sanitizing the ball. I was asking the athletic directors in my league, and they told me that there's a sanitizer they spray onto the ball, and it disinfects it pretty quick and all that. But it's just a lot of work and a lot of monies and energy and everything else just to try to get one game in. And the thing that I just pray and I hope, I know that the governor just shut down the scrimmages, but I just hope if they're going to let us play, to have at least one scrimmage just to go through the motions and see like a dry run. You know what I'm saying?
And John, you hit on something earlier. What about administrators? Okay, the most important thing when Dana and I show up for a game, we need a program. We need names. We need a roster. And, they have to go out and sell those program ads. That's how they make some money for their booster club. I mean, that's all on hold right now. And I think Stacie Cepin, who's just signing in right now as an athletic director, she can address that and tell you how important it is to have a program with ads, to make money, team photographs in there. But again, the most important thing I want to be able to spell their names right. Dana wants to be able to say their names right on the air.
For sure. I know that we'll get them to you, but I mean, there is a factor of trying to generate money for your programs. And I'm sure there'll be saying, and there's another thing I'd like to bring to your attention that's been brought up in our league and every league, I'm sure, in the area, but you have your press boxes are limited space. How many coaches you going to let up there? How many people because of spacing? I mean, everything has to be by state guidelines, and those things are all being thought through right now. You know, I mean, don't take anything for granted. I mean, everything has changed.
Hey, John.
I think you said it the best, John, when you said there's just, if there was any possibility of answers, but to some of these, there's no answers. And I think that's the right way to look at it. If there was a possibility of answers, I think there would be a possibility of starting this thing on time or playing a half a season. But I think there's too many unanswered questions. And it seems like when you ask a question, there's 4 more questions that come with that question. And right, what do you do with your coaches? What do you do with the ball boys if it's a rainy night? I mean, there's so many different things that you really don't think of, but now you got to think of those things because over the years we've taken them for granted.
Excellent. I mean, that's very true. I mean, right now, I mean, they said if from talking to my athletic directors, if they do get the okay to play in that, they can use they can use the locker rooms and that, and all the practices they weren't allowed to use the locker rooms for practice, and they bring their own water. And now they're talking about the players maybe coming half dressed to the games, no showers afterwards. The officials have already been notified. It looks like they'll be going home dressed or bringing something where you can change real quick. But there's no
boy.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of and everybody's going to have to give something. I mean, everybody's going to have to help out the cause, because I mean, we're there for the kids, and it just breaks my heart when I watch all these great interviews with all the schools and the potential they have this year, and they're looking to banner years and to participate. I mean, it's just a shame. I mean, we went through with the spring sports, and it just hurts you inside when these kids don't have the opportunity, but they mature so quick. And fortunately, we have so many kids that are mature, but of course, safety is number one, and we're at the mercy of our governor and our OSSA. And hey, we'll all know within a few weeks.
Well, here's and John, you have roughly 12, 14 schools, give or take.
I have 16 in the Mahoning Valley Athletic Conference, and I have some other conferences I do a signing for.
So you cover a variety of territory just on the east in Ohio. And I know I know one big thing is a lot of counties in the state of Ohio have been restricting to go out of the county. And I know there's some other, and how would that affect, say, for example, Trumbull County says, hey, you can't go out. Well, you have also teams in Mahoning County that play those teams. So have any of that been thought of or talked about?
I was at a meeting where it was brought up about the governor having, I believe it was called a red zone or something, where the county more or less is shut down. That has nothing to do with sports.
Okay.
They can do, but you know what? The health departments or whatever in each county have their own deal. I mean, and plus some schools go through the health department, some don't. Some go through the guidelines the OSSA gives them. There's another thing that they're working their way through to try to be on one page. Everybody got to be on the same page. But as far as the playing, I mean, Ashtabula counties, I believe it was with Jefferson and some of the schools up that way, Pie Valley and Grand Valley. And I was surprised to see how many teams they played down this way, but they were all canceled. Then they put them back on. If you saw that, I'm sure Dana was involved in a lot of conversation on that.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I mean, Franklin County has recommended, online classes and no sports till October 2nd. Cuyahoga County made that recommendation tonight, whether that gets approved or not. I mean, those are two of the biggest counties in Columbus and Cleveland, and I think that ripple effect is just going to start. And guys, I mean, to be quite honest, I don't see the season starting on time. I think you got to look at a partial season, maybe 5 or 6 games.
I'm hoping they will start after September 15th, would give us our 7 games. And if you're in a league of 8 teams, that would give you your league schedule. That's just trying to be positive and maybe, I don't know, wishful thinking. But I can give you an example right now. Is starting Jim Pank over at Austintown Fitch. I mean, like I said, there's been some community members in all districts, and I'd say, what are these athletic directors doing? There's no sports. What do they do? Well, let me tell you something. I'll give you an example. Jim Pank, they were playing a team from Erie, one of the better teams from Erie. Most of them are pretty good up that way anyway, but they got a call that PA canceled the season. This has been a month or so ago. So Jim gave me a call, and he goes, John, don't cancel anything with the officials and all that. I'm trying to pick up another school. And, I busted his butt and everything. And then he called me back, and a week later or so, he goes, John, I lucked out. I got a team from West Virginia. And I said, that's great. And it was I don't recall the name of the school, but it was
Lindley.
Yeah.
Lindley.
Okay. And Dana, you can tell them what happened there.
Well, then what happened is West Virginia decided they're not going to start their practice till September 17th. August 17th. The first game's the 28th. Lindsley didn't think 11 days was enough to get ready for a game, so they pulled the plug on that. So Fitch is looking.
Yeah. And now am I wrong when I could be wrong, but I thought I heard where PA put it back on. They're going to play.
Pennsylvania has a committee with the NCAA has recommended they can play, but it still has to be approved by the PIAA. And then obviously the governor would have the final say. But I think both states are kind of in the same position. I don't see the season starting 4 weeks from tonight. Unfortunately, this is something we have no control over.
For sure.
Hindsight's 2020. I guess if things would have been shut down a little bit earlier, maybe we're talking about a different story now. But you got to play with the cards you're dealt with.
For sure, and and volleyball. We're talking football. I know, but volleyball's in the same boat. I mean, they're scrimmaging now and they're doing everything, and a little bit about volleyball. They're not going to rotate. If you follow volleyball, they're going to stay on the same bench areas for the whole five sets. The officials, it's not mandatory, but they're recommended to wear masks. But safety things there, but I don't know. They do all these things, but it happened a few years ago in the NCAA where the rule that really just I never will forget is there was some issues going on with some kind of virus or something, but nobody was allowed to shake hands before or after the match, but they all touched the same ball for 5 sets, But volleyball, they're a go right now. But the NCAA this year, about 2 weeks ago or 3, they declared it a contact sport. I think the only reason volleyball right now is still going is because it's classified a non-contact sport. But soccer's in the same boat as football and cross country. For years and years and years, they've had the same meets and everything, a great league and everything, and they had to cut it because of the social gathering for a starting line prevented them from having 20 schools or 25 schools, and it suggested they go to 3 or 4 schools now if they're going to have a cross country meet. And McDonald is really big in it, and with the Billy Goat heel they got over there for years, and they've been state champs for how many years, but I know they've had meetings late as this last Tuesday or Wednesday. I called and trying to get a hold of the superintendent, and he was involved with meetings. But right now, if you're having your cross country on non-school properties, you may not be able to run it anyway. You may be allowed to. Like right now, they're having some issues with the park they use in McDonald. It may be taken care of or whatever, but they're just trying to be proactive and being safe with the public being there too and everything. So right now, I heard rumors that the cross country Dana, that they might have something out at the Trumbull Fairgrounds. They've been talking to them out there about setting up a course there, or maybe there is already one been there that I'm not aware of. But I just hope, every sport they have the opportunity to participate, to compete against each other. But the days of the 20, 25 schools or 30, I don't know how many participate at one time, but they can't do it with the starts,
Yeah, this seems to be a lot going on, and just a lot of things that people don't know of what's going on behind the background. So, John, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule.
I do want to do one thing here. Hold on. Don't cut me off. It's a shame I got to start a season off like this, but every year, and Dana, you've attended a few of our opening meetings to introduce yourself and some of our new administrators, but usually I'll get the superintendents or the principals and the ADs, maybe a cup or maybe just something to start the season off on the right foot. This year, here you go. I got a face mask with the Mahoning Valley Athletic Conference on it. And I think that was probably about the best thing I can buy for them or purchase as a gift, because I think, unfortunately, we'll be wearing these hopefully for maybe 6 months, but it could be for a school year, I see any of you fellas out, I have one for you too, because I want everybody to be safe. But hey, thanks for having me on, everybody.
Thank you, John. I appreciate your time. Take care and be safe.
Thanks, John.
All right, thank you. Take care.
And that brings us a lot going on behind the scenes that we're really unaware of.
Well, and again, I just think there's just so many questions that are out there that athletic directors, assigners, superintendents, they just want direction. And not getting that direction, they just become, I'm sure they're answering questions every day from their constituents and people in their school district about what's going on. And, there's no answers. And I think there has to be some clarity.
Let's find out right now. We'll bring on Stacie Cepin, the new athletic director at Cameron Memorial High School. Boy, this name sounds familiar, doesn't it? Hi, Stacie. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me on. I don't know. I'm following some serious legends on this show today.
Go Red Devils. Take that.
There, a graduate up in that corner over there.
Alma Mater Tech.
That's right. That's right.
So you heard a little bit of what John had to say. We talked a little bit about behind the scenes of what kind of the conference was doing and some of the administrators. Tell us what you guys are doing behind the scenes that parents may ask you, or what people don't know.
I mean, everything. First things first, it's safety protocols and making sure the student athletes, the coaches, everything is as safe as possible. We've been at this. It's funny. I took this job March 16th was my first day. And if you guys recall, that was the first day of the shutdown by the governor. So it's been interesting the last 5 months. But I hit the ground running with trying to figure out, first everything was shut down, but how do I communicate with coaches and some of the administrators and stuff that I didn't fully know yet. So that was an interesting couple weeks start. And but since then, the one thing that I found out quickly, I've always been friends with coaches across the valley and officials and stuff like that. But our athletic director kind of fraternity in this area is unbelievable in the support that they give. And especially in a time like this, with us going through all of that, we've really stuck together to try to, help each other in any way that we can. But it's just been a lot of planning and trying to communicate. I heard John say earlier about, everything is on a Zoom now. So, we're all, I think all of us are in-person people and, we like to be around people, and that's why we're all involved in sports. But I think the support has been great around the area for sure.
And we talk about some of the things going on, like right now, you already have certain workouts of football and just weight rooms. How are you guys handling that with cleanliness, testing,
Sure.
anything along those areas?
Well, we have our safety protocols in place. All of our coaches are wearing masks, and our administrators that are around the building. Also, we follow the OHSAA recommendations. They sent out early on like a symptom checklist. We have these infrared thermometers. So everybody's being checked in one at a time before the workouts. They're doing as much as they can with small group within some of the larger groups, especially like football. They're doing a great job with doing some of those things. Our custodial staff, they're the real stars here because, we've scheduled all of our workouts right now during the day. So they could just be there to help out and get everything cleaned. And again, they've been amazing. I can't give enough credit to them for keeping up with trying to keep everything safe for us. We have those misters like the Ghostbuster things and it's just constant. Our coaches are doing a great job considering this. I mean, when you have 95-degree heat and they have to wear these masks, that's not easy to coach, especially when you have some coaches out there that are really passionate.
There's another angle that we probably haven't even thought of. John Mang just had open heart surgery. Stacie's a cancer survivor. I mean, take it one step further and all the precautions they have to take just for their own health, yet alone everybody else's.
Yeah, it's interesting to see him have bust out the masks. I have definitely an array of masks right now, different colors and all of that things. But yeah, all kidding aside, it's just we're all in this unknown time period, and just trying to take the extra precautions. Just trying to stay as healthy as possible, just because we just don't know what's around the corner.
Stacie, how I mean, as an administrator, and obviously this is new to you, and I know when this thing's all done, becoming an athletic or being an athletic director will be a whole lot easier. But I mean, direction. I'm assuming you as an athletic director want direction just so you can prepare. Whether the season's going to start 4 weeks tonight, if it's going to start in a month or whatever. I mean,
right?
How frustrating is that for you?
It has been frustrating. We're all, again, I think we have a great group of administrators that are in contact daily. It is very frustrating, but we're trying to be as positive as we can because it is out of our control, and just being able to try to balance everything. I mean, our administration's doing a great job. Our superintendent, our principals, they're working tirelessly. I mean, every time I'm on that side of the building or they're around, they're trying to find and, talk to different schools and talk to different people and work out the best plan possible for these kids. I mean, first and foremost, we have to get school right. We can talk about sports as much as we want, but we have to make sure that, our school start times and end times and all of that stuff, that we have to make sure that that's all practical first. Busing are issues that can lead into, getting to sports on time and all of those things. So, everything as far as the academic side, sports will be predicated on what exactly happens with academics first. So I think, we're all working pretty hard and trying to figure all of those things out. It is frustrating, but we could sit here and be negative and play the blame game. I mean, ultimately, they're going to have to make decisions fast because August 1st is Saturday. So fall sports, and I know Dana said earlier, there's golf matches, there's cross-country meets next week. So they have to give us some kind of direction soon. It has been long enough.
And the governor's, and with all due respect to the governor, I think he's done a great job, leading this. He keeps saying, well, the next several weeks will tell us, what's going to happen in the fall.
Yeah.
The next several weeks is already here.
It's here. Yeah. Because,
And the worst thing for kids is, from a football aspect, they're going to get equipment maybe, Saturday or Monday, one day early next week. And then sooner or later, like I said earlier, that rug's going to be pulled from them, that the season's not going to start on time. Yeah. It's going to be devastating for these sports.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we kind of all feel that way too. And it's just, I feel it's inevitable. I hate saying that. I'm trying to be positive. I feel like they're trying to get something going for our kids. But I just, I'm realistic also about what we're seeing. You guys were talking about it earlier in the professional sports. I have lots of friends that coach in college, and all of those have been shut down or postponed. And it's just, it's inevitable. But, we're trying to come up with plans for whatever is thrown at us. It's a one day at a time thing. And I'm talking to the coaches daily, talking to our administration daily. So
yeah, it's tough. I mean,
trying to come up with
it's
as possible with what we know.
Have you had any postponing or removing of games for any of your fall sports as of yet?
Not yet. There obviously the scrimmages, I think John touched on earlier, but those for the contact sports. But we do have scrimmages set up for volleyball already. Those, unless something changes in the next couple of days, those are going to take place coming up next week for us. So nothing yet. I feel bad for how much time John puts in for assigning. I mean, especially what he had to do for the spring and move all of those things, and then preparing for what's to come right now. And then if he has to move them again or postpone them, he does a lot of work for us. And it definitely, he's a superstar for sure.
He delayed his surgery so he could make sure that everybody knew what they were going to do.
He's amazing. I've known him a long time. He's been an awesome individual to know. So.
Well, you're getting a lot of props right now, Stacie, because I know he's listening and smiling at the same time. So I know you're getting a lot of props right now. So, but and Stacie, that brings up a couple things. Is when you roll into fall, everyone's talking about kids going back to school, fall sports. Have you heard that if the kids don't go back in the fall and it's all online learning, will there be fall sports?
It's just it's a weird topic, and you can see a lot of our major cities are doing that. They have already gone that route. So I don't. It's really hard to justify not if you don't have one, then you can have the other. I don't know how you can do that. So that's a great question. I really don't have an answer for. I mean, I don't know. I go back to, I think we need to get school right first. If we had to choose, or, there was a survey that went around about what we felt. And I just feel like we need to get school right first before sports happen. But I also know our kids need sports. So it's just a tough call right now.
Well, I was asked I was asked that question, if there's no school physically in the building, I asked that question to an administrator I know, and basically the answer I got was, what's the difference with the virus? The virus doesn't change after 3 o'clock when school's out. And I took that as an answer that, if there's if it's all online, there will be no sports. And Cuyahoga County has recommended that tonight. Franklin County has recommended that. Those are two of your bigger cities.
Yeah, and that's something we'll really get into here shortly with one of the superintendents coming up from Struthers. So, and Stacie, I know there's a lot going on, and what I wanted to just kind of get your thought after what Dana's question was. So go ahead and answer that. Sorry.
Well, he's mentioning the counties. They are, I think, because people are tired of waiting for decisions. So I know counties and their health departments have taken it upon themselves to delay or postpone or cancel or whatever it is. And it's interesting. Our league that we're in, the Mahoning Valley Athletic Conference, spans across 3 counties. So, one county could be, red and one orange, one yellow example. And we're not really sure. I know some of our ADs, we were talking last week, and it's like, do we stay within our county? What do we do? We're not really sure how to handle that. So I don't know.
I'm going to throw out something hypothetically here. Okay. As an administrator, Stacie, if the decision was made to shut down everything starting tomorrow and say, okay, on September 17th, we're going to if things are okay, we're going to open up practice for all sports. Now, again, football, you probably need about 3 weeks. Soccer, probably a week. Volleyball or whatever, probably. And say, okay, October 2nd, we're going to try to play week 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 in high school football and from there. I think again, hindsight's 20/20, but if you shut everything down as far as sports, the bars are already going to close at 10. Maybe that's a little bit of help. So everything comes together. You shut down sports, and I talk all sports, your sandlots games, everything. Maybe that comes down a little bit, and then maybe you're ready for high school sports. I mean, would that be something that administrators you think would be in favor of? Hey, let's try to play 5 games of football, which is better than none.
I think anything is better than none. Anything that we can get our kids involved is definitely better than none. I think the scrimmage thing, canceling, I think kind of helps a little bit in the right direction. But I don't think we should shut down our individual practices and workouts. I think those should continue. Obviously, kids need that structure and they need that preparation time. But I don't think shut it down completely. But, maybe across, playing other teams, I think that might be okay to delay. But I think as long as within your own district, if things are good, I don't think shutting down would be the best thing to do. I mean, unless we all start talking about going online, but I don't think that's going to happen for everyone yet either. So but I would take something over nothing.
Financially, how tough is this for you guys? From a standpoint where there could be no football?
It's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. I think, again, coming into a unique situation, part of my job is to make sure that, we can raise some money and get things going to give our student athletes the best experience possible. Money also helps things like that happen. So that's definitely a big challenge, not only for our district, but every district that's not going to be, involved in sports. And we'll be honest, we know football brings a lot of that. So, that's one of the things that there is a challenge, and nobody was able to do fundraisers over the span of our summer. There's a lot of golf outings that happen that, usually go within the months of June and July. A few other things that we didn't have any, we're doing little things. We're trying to do some things to try to do that, but nothing that would amount to what we could make if we do have sports running. So.
Well, there's a lot going on, and we appreciate everything you do for our student athletes and our kids, Stacie. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we'll catch up with you hopefully when there's a football season.
Yeah, hopefully we're hearing some good news here in the next couple of weeks. And thank you, Tony, for having me on. It was great to visit with you guys, Greg and Dana. Great to see you, and stay safe.
Thank you, Stacie. Good luck. As you could tell, there's a lot going on behind the scenes for at least at Campbell, and especially money-wise. They're paying a lot of money for a lot of different equipment and stuff like that.
Well, and that's the bottom line. And, something we didn't even touch on. I mean, fans, if there's a season, fans are going to be limited. So, are there going to be concessions? Are there going to be, the fundraisers that you see at these games? I would think not. And I just think, again, there's just a lot of unanswered questions that administrators have to make it known. Is it worth it to, and maybe that's not the right word, but financially, you're not going to be bringing in as much revenue as you once did. So, former athletic director, you know that.
Well, exactly. And Dana, you're going to bring, Tony, you're going to bring Pete Pirone in here, one of the best administrators in the Mahoning Valley. But I'm looking at DeJuan Stevenson's note over here on the side, and he says, "I'm scared they will delay the season, and then this pandemic will get worse, causing no season at all." And when Pete comes in, I think, Pete, if you can address that, that's a pretty good scenario there to look at.
Well, let's bring Pete in. Pete Pirone, the superintendent of Struthers City Schools. Pete, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me tonight. And Greg, let's get that Struthers Campbell game going again, huh?
That would be nice. Trouble is, it's like the Michigan-Ohio State game. You own us.
That's it.
We talk. You've probably heard a lot of what we've been talking about with Stacie Cepin, the athletic director, as well as John Mang. What have been some of the challenges that you guys have been? And we'll talk a little bit about the season here for sports. About what are some of the challenges that your school district is facing with this COVID about either bringing kids back or online learning?
I think it really comes, and a lot of people talked about it, is we need direction. A lot of the parents want answers and our teachers want answers. And quite frankly, we don't have the direction. So, we're trying to make decisions and move forward with limited answers, which makes it difficult, whether it's preparing for the school year, preparing for athletics. Our staffs are doing a great job. As soon as we had a Zoom meeting when we knew athletics can start practicing, and our coaches picked up and have been great, taking care of a lot of those temperature checks and all of those type deals. And but until we get official direction, it's hard for us to plan. Right now we're planning for everything.
And that brings up a big point is you guys probably haven't got, or maybe you've started receiving emergency funds from COVID funds to pay for specific equipment that you may need for fall. Has that helped you, or has that been hard to get funds-wise?
No, obviously that has helped. Obviously, you take care of the school first in terms of the sneeze guards, and the cleaning supplies obviously went straight to all of our athletic teams and then to the building as we're preparing them for school. But, we talked about concession stands and what does concession stands look like, but we also need to have prepared those with plexiglass if we're able to have concession stands and being able to charge instead of dealing with money. So a lot of those little details that you don't think about at a high school event are now part of our plans.
PT, have you guys come up with your school plan?
I'm sorry, I missed that, Dana.
I'm sorry, Dana. It's a costly venture, Pete.
It is. And you're right. And you can't put a price on the ability for our kids to have athletics. But you're right. If fans are limited, that's obviously going to hurt our bottom line.
Pete, have you guys come up with a school plan yet?
For athletics, we're working with our league.
For academics.
Yeah. So for academics, so we're given choice. You could be in the building 5 days a week with social distancing, or you can start the first 9 weeks remotely.
Now, the tough question is if you're remote, how can you, would you be in favor? I guess my question is, if you were all remote, would you approve or not have sports?
I think if we're forced to be remote, it's because our numbers are so high in the county or in the state, and how do you put the kids at risk? I think that's probably the direction you'd have to go. And, we even had that conversation of parents choose remote. How can you come to practice? How can you play tackle football? We're going to allow it, but it'll be a waiver through the high school principal because we want to make sure our student athletes are safe as well.
Pete, through the superintendents, is there still a superintendents association in the state?
Yes. Yeah, there's superintendent association, and our county is working closely. We actually meet with the Mahoning County Public Health weekly now.
I mean, but have you, from this, and again, it's probably an unfair question to you because we're so far from Columbus, but it just appears, we've been talking about this all night, is direction. And I think that you hit the nail on the head. You need direction. The school year's upon us. It's 3 weeks away for some districts, and still you have no direction which way to go. So is there maybe an attempt to say to the governor, look, we're 3 weeks away. We need direction yesterday.
Right. And we understand, listen, we understand the pressure that's on the governor to make decisions and 3 weeks is a long time. A lot can change. We always say this is our decision as of, July 30th. And we know that can change in a day, that can change in a week. So that's why, what we're doing is you're planning for everything. You're planning for every scenario. You're planning that we'll be back. We're planning that we're playing sports. But you're also planning that if we need to be distance learning, in a day or two, we're able to roll that out and be successful.
And Pete, that brings me to this question off of Dana's question. Were you disappointed the governor didn't even address athletics today?
It didn't surprise me. I think we say, for us, it's immediate because we're dealing with it. I was surprised the announcement of canceling all the scrimmages. As a football coach, those are important. I know the safety of our kids with COVID is important, but it kind of makes you think, if you can't have a scrimmage, how are you going to have a game? That's kind of what we're starting to think.
Pete, will your band travel to away games, or haven't you gotten to that point just yet?
So our league, the NE8, is talking about that. Our next league superintendent meeting is the first week of August. Well, I guess, which is already next week. But we open up with Ashtabula, and then we go to Crestwood. So the band director and I, had already talked, and we don't think we'll be sending our band to the first 2 away games, no matter what our league decides. I mean, those are pretty far trips to open up the year.
So then, if you were going to send your band, instead of sending 2 buses, you may be sending 3 or 4 because of social distancing. Is that the case, Pete?
Yeah, and just the idea of what's unnecessary travel, especially if they're going to cut halftime down to 10 minutes. Both bands probably aren't going to be able to perform anyways. And that was one of our concerns early. If away bands aren't going to come to our facility, does our band need to prepare for now a 20-minute halftime show rather than a 10-minute halftime show? But if they cut halftime down, that kind of makes it a little easier for bands, the away band, not to be there.
Financially, Pete, if there's a half a season, 7 games or whatever. My personal opinion is I very doubt there will be a full season. Right. Financially, how big of a hit for you guys?
It's a pretty big hit. And then even concession stands. Last year we had some big home games with the new turf. We had great crowds. Our concession stands made a ton of money, and that goes to our senior class, which then helps with homecoming and prom and, the Cedar Point trip. So it's not just athletics that's affected. It's program sale, program ads and scoreboard ads and concession money that goes to clubs.
Just basically a huge domino effect, not just sports, but for the extracurricular activities that go along with it during your school year.
It is. And how do you go to a business and ask them to put an ad on the scoreboard or put an ad in the program when you don't know if you're going to have a season?
Well, and we talked a little bit about that with John Mang. We talked a little bit about that earlier. That says Greg, his newspaper does a huge thing for high school football. So how do you do the program ads? How do you write the articles? Are you even going to have a season? So that's money that they get from that revenue. So that says a lot about how just sports and in general, the domino effect.
Right. And then even all the local businesses after a game, how many people are going to go out and grab a sandwich or something to eat or drink after the game. So it hurts the local. You're right. It's a trickle down effect that, we think about it's playing sports, but it's a whole community event in a town that loses out.
Pete, if you had one question to ask the governor, what would you ask him tonight?
Just how quick can you give us direction? Whatever it's going to be. And like I said, we're preparing for every situation. So, that's just our nature, whether it's the old football coach or just being a planner, you prepare for everything and, you adapt. And I think the biggest things will be patience and flexibility. We're pressing that to our administrators, our athletic director, our coaches, and hopefully to the fans. Be patient and let's be flexible, and whatever's thrown at us, we'll adjust and we'll do what we need to do for our student athletes.
I talk to a lot of coaches. I talk to a lot of administrators, and the big question that comes in part of the conversation is it worth it to play a game, to play your game officials, your game day operations, if there are no fans?
Is it financially worth it? No. Is it worth it for the students? Yes. And at the end of the day, we're there for the students. You're right. You're paying security. We're taking temperatures. You have all of that because you're still going to have to take temperatures because you're going to have administrators there. You're going to have officials there. So you're still going to have security and all that thing. So it's a cost, but it's a cost that, I'm willing to absorb if it means our student athletes get an opportunity.
Well, I think that brings up a great point is when we go into football season and all these fall sports is, what about testing? How are you guys going to deal with testing, not just for your your players and your coaches, but the players going back into the school.
Yeah, and we did testing early in July. We had talked about potential testing. I know the CDC doesn't necessarily recommend. Obviously we don't have the funds like the NFL or the NBA or Major League.
Don't you wish you did?
Yeah, it'd be nice to test every day or every other day and know where our kids are at. So that's a little bit that's different in terms of high school versus maybe college or professional sports. But we're also hoping that our kids are making the right decisions. If they want to play, that they need to have some sacrifices and social distance and do the right things when they're not around high school and practice.
Good point.
And we talk a lot about online versus in the classroom. If those students and parents go to online, are you supplying them with technology, or they're going to have to count? They're going to have to count on what they have at home?
No, so we're fortunate. We have enough Chromebooks. So next year, every student K through 12 will have their own Chromebook. We also had a grant a couple years ago where we have enough hotspots. So any kid that doesn't have internet access at home gets a free hotspot, and we're able to connect them to the internet. So we're pretty fortunate that we're advanced in terms of technology. And we wanted, Mahoning County superintendents collaborated. We wanted to give parents choice because we know it's not an easy decision to send your kids back or not at this time.
Pete, back to the testing real quick. Under the current restrictions or protocols by the state of Ohio, kids have to be tested. And I would assume if a season starts that probably would continue. That could be very expensive. The schools, I would assume, can't afford that. Some of the parents, where does that cost? How do you handle that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess we go to the treasurer and beg to see what other accounts he has to help us out.
Tell Dennis to go get those grants.
That's it. And it gets hard because, you're hearing results now are taking 4 or 5 days. So you might get tested on a Monday or Tuesday, and that's one of the things we talked about as a league. How flexible are we with scheduling? You get a kid, you get some teammates that are shut down on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and all of a sudden now you're not playing football for 2 weeks. Is the league going to be flexible with maybe moving games around of other teams that could be quarantined as well?
What's your gut tell you, Pete? What's in your crystal ball? I know, it's hypothetical, but what do you think? I get asked all the time, so I want someone else.
I agree with you. I don't see a full season happening. I guess maybe that's me being hopeful too, that at least that be able to play a partial season and the playoffs.
Is partial better than none, or should you move it to the spring?
At a small school, moving it to the spring also causes some problems because really we're going to hurt our secondary sports. How many kids then might not play baseball or might not run track because they're going to choose to play football. So to me, anything is better than nothing. I couldn't imagine being a senior and missing out with so many things that the class of 2020 did. So I would always say something's better than nothing.
Well, we had a question come from people that are listening, and I'll point this to you, Pete. It says, if they do agree to have football and start on time, would you agree or disagree with that? Do you think they should extend the opening and start at September and only have 7 or 8 games, or go over the full season?
I'll trust what the experts are telling us. So if they're telling us it's safe to start now, then I'll believe them. If someone shows us data that it's safer to wait a couple weeks, then we'll believe that. Again, I want our student athletes to be safe. I want our administrators. I want our coaches. I want our fans to be safe. That's our top priority. So if the experts are telling us that it's safe to start, then we'll be prepared to start. I don't know if it's what I ever personally or professionally agree with. We're going to do what's best and most safe for our kids and our fans.
Well, and I think that brings out that a lot of your testing is being done on site, on the school site, correct?
Correct.
So since we don't know when a vaccine is going to happen, it could be December, it could be December. where hopefully you're getting the necessary supplies and not getting delays so you can do that to your kids. Is that a good fact that you're getting the necessary supplies to test?
Like I said, we tested early in July. We haven't tested since, because obviously we haven't done any competitions against any other teams. We have stayed just within us right now. So, again, that'll be a potential issue of getting the test and getting the results back.
Yeah, and that brings up a lot of unknowns basically, and we're just all looking for direction.
We are, and I know all of us are planners, and all of us are impatient, and we want answers. And again, it just comes back to we need to be patient, and when we get the answers, we need to be flexible and do what's best.
Well, the football season starts in approximately 4 to 5 weeks, so we'll see what kind of answer we get in the coming week from the governor. Pete, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anytime. Love to come on again and help out and have the discussion. I want to have a great night.
You too. Thank you, Pete. As you could tell, there's a lot going on behind the scenes and a lot that there are too many unknowns. I think that's a big problem, and we're looking at direction.
Well, that's the common theme, and I certainly, that's the common thing, and I've been hearing this for a couple of weeks now. Look, I think coaches, administrators, superintendents, they don't care what a decision it is. They just want to know the direction to go with whatever decision is made. And, as a superintendent, look, Pete told us, and I'm sure other superintendents are in the same boat. You got to worry about your school building. You got to worry about busing. You got to worry about athletics. You got to worry about this. You got to worry about that. If you could scratch athletics off, okay, then you got those other things that are more important that you got to worry about.
And you know what, guys? Maybe 2-3 weeks ago, when some of the schools were ready to meet, there were actually 7 or 8 different scenarios the board was talking about. So there's just not one clear-cut scenario. There's 7 or 8 out there. Do you go to school Monday and Tuesday, take off Wednesday to, sanitize the building, come back Thursday and Friday? Who goes in the morning? Who goes in the afternoon? So many variables.
Well, look at the busing. A bus may have to go into the neighborhood 2, 3, 4 different times. And again, superintendents have a lot on their plates, and I think, as you could scratch these things off because they're taken care of, and athletics is a huge one. I mean, there's 350,000 athletes in the state of Ohio, and I guarantee all of them, along with thousands of coaches, are pins and needles.
Sure.
Well, in one poll that was taken, they did the United States. 6 states are to be determined and don't know what they're doing yet. 2 of them have moved their start time. 4 have actually moved their seasons to 2021. 9 are on delay, and 29 are actually scheduled on time as of today.
Well, we know where Ohio stands.
Yeah.
And again, it's just, I think people know what the inevitable is. Someone just got to pull that plug of what the decision is going to be. And again, I think it will be a delayed season. I would hope for 5 or 6 games. The state's going to do everything in their power to play the playoffs because that is a moneymaker for them. They need the finances, even though it would be limited fans. And who knows, by that time, things may change if there is a season. But, coaches, I give them credit. Administrators, I give them credit because I'm sure they're getting questions every single day as we are, what's going on.
Well, and I think it kind of culminates to there are schools in the state of Ohio that are canceling their fall athletic schedules and activities. For example, over in Cincinnati, Middletown City Schools, and I think we mentioned earlier the Cleveland City Schools have canceled. Is that correct?
Cleveland Metropolitan Schools have put everything on hold because they're online learning. Toledo will probably make that announcement sometime within the next 24 hours. Cuyahoga County is recommending that as well. I think that those dominoes have started to kind of go down now, and I think sooner or later, Tony, again, I talked to Greg about this. I mean, I think everybody was anticipating some sort of announcement today because of practice starting on Saturday, and no announcement came. And I think kids get frustrated. I think kids get a lot of hope in them that, hey, we're starting practice officially. Things look good, but they don't. They don't. And why the governor, and this isn't the Ohio High School Athletic Association, I mean, why the governor and his team, maybe he's waiting on other states to make decisions because he does talk to those states. But again, the theme of tonight has been direction, and I feel bad for these administrators because they don't have it right now when it comes to athletics.
Well, and I think one big thing that maybe people don't realize is, here's an example of the domino effect. This is just in college. The Horizon League, which Youngstown State University is a member of, except football, has canceled or postponed all sports till October 1st. So you can see the domino effect. You can also see that all sports for the Ohio Athletic Conference, which is a D3 out of the Mahoning Valley, has canceled all sports till December 31st. And that's just D3, D2 with the domino effect.
Wow.
So those are just some things.
Yeah, and again, the PSAC has done that with Westminster, Teal, and Grove City. They've kind of put things, till the end of the year as well. And, it's just a matter of time, in my opinion, that this happens. And whether they pull and again, I don't think they're going to pull the plug on the season. I think it would be let's back it up and see what we can do. But, as these bigger cities do it, and these health boards make these recommendations, I certainly don't think any administrator is going to go against the recommendation of a county health board.
And I think these schools are going to be, if there's no football or postpone or they lose games, like Pete said, they're going to lose thousands of, maybe tens of thousands of dollars to support the school system itself. So well, guys, I appreciate your time. Dana, Greg, always a pleasure. You up for a little Q&A? We got some questions on the board. Hopefully we can answer them and give the best advice. This one is from Joe. If they delay the football season, how many games will they play, and how would they be eligible for the playoffs?
I think it's at a 4 or 5 game, maybe a 5 or a 6 game schedule max, right, Dana?
Yeah, the state has said the minimum of 8 games is off the table for 2020. So the Harbor ratings would only be determined by the number of games you play. Again, I would think if you play 5 or 6 games, the top 8 teams would go to the playoffs like you was a 10-game schedule. And I think that would be the best case scenario. I don't think the state would change that at all. I just think, in normal years, you would have to play a minimum of 8 games. Well, now you could play again. And again, if you read between the lines, the state took out the 8 games. So that tells me they don't think there's going to be a full schedule. So if you play 4 games, 5, 6 games, the top 8 teams in each region would advance, would be my opinion on that.
Do you think, Dana, so? I think maybe this spring, the Ohio High School Football Coaches Association presented a expansion of the playoffs for 2021 or 2. I forget what year.
2021.
Do you think they would take that and move it to this year because of the short season?
Not at all, Tony. I don't think that would happen. And you got to keep in mind, the Ohio High School Athletic Association doesn't have a place to play the state finals yet. I mean, obviously, it will most likely be Canton at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, but there's not a signed contract just yet.
That's some interesting information. So they don't even know what they're doing.
Well, I think they for all intents and purposes, it will be there. But as far as having a signed deal, that has not been done yet.
It's interesting. Greg, anything on that?
I'm with Dana. The 8 games off the table. So, this is anything. Look what's happening professionally. And look at all the new rules that they're having in football this year. So used to be 35, stay inside the 35-yard line or it's a penalty. They might as well let you go all the way down the sideline just for social distancing.
And that's going to be hard. So this next question comes from Krista. Can go to any one of you guys. What would happen if a player or parent of a player, I think what I'm getting at is if a player or parent
if they test positive, it looks like.
Yeah, test positive. Will they postpone a game or reschedule it? How will they handle that? That's an interesting question.
That's a good question. I mean, in talking with some of the people down at Youngstown State, what if they were to fly to North Dakota State? Somebody tests positive. You have to quarantine for 14 days. Are you down for the next 2 weeks? Do you stay in North Dakota till that happens? There's so many scenarios. Dana, you and I have talked about that.
Yeah, I think in this situation, I mean, if a player or if a player tests positive, they're not going to cancel the game for that one player or postpone that game for that one player. If that's the way I'm reading that right. I mean, I think once the state starts a season, they're going to try to finish that season as best they can. But again, and I thought Pete and Stacie brought up a great point is, okay, if you're playing a team and that team can't play because, the team is shut down, is there another team out there? That's good to talk about. It's good to think about those things, but to really make it happen, you're talking about a whole different set of circumstances. It could be tough. I mean, again, this is uncharted territory for us, and I just think it's going to be tough if a season starts, and once you get through, let's say it goes 5 or 6 games, you're into the playoffs. Okay, you're going to be down, but keep in mind the playoffs this year will be a little bit different. There's not going to be any neutral site games until the Final Four. Everything will be at a home team with the highest seed. So things are changing on that front as well.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see if they do have football like they do basketball or baseball. Will there be fans?
Well, that's a big question. And, you look at stadiums around here and Greg, you've been around and you've covered games, 4 weeks, usually weeks 1, 2, and 3 are pretty good attendance wise because the weather's still nice. It's comfortable to be outside. I think grandparents have a chance to see their kids play or if they're in the band because it is decent weather. Fans is a big question. I've talked to several administrators about that. I hear everything that a player will get 2 tickets. I heard, they'll make an announcement that if you're with the same family, if you're not with the same family, you need 3 seats in between you. And really, who's going to police that? I don't think school administrators will be able to police that. I don't think the security will be able to police that. So it's tough when it comes to fans. I mean, and again, Pete, what about the band? So if you're playing a home game, are you going to give 2 tickets or whatever to your band people? And again, these are questions that no one really has answers to.
Yeah.
And look what's happening on the Pro Golf Tour right now. They're playing in front of nobody.
They've been that way for at least 3 to 4 weeks.
There you go.
And again, it comes back to, and I think Pete had a great response to that. Is it worth it? Financially, no, but for the student athletes, yes. And I think most administrators would think of it that way. But I've talked to administrators who say, look, if we don't play our first 2 home games, not only that going to be a financially hit for us in football, but every other sport we have.
Sure.
Yeah, domino effect, as we talked earlier.
Excellent.
So, well, Dana and Greg, those are all the questions that we've answered all of the questions so far that we've gotten. We appreciate everyone watching. Dana and Greg, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Tony, for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Tony,
not a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules and kind of helping put all this together. You're always welcome on my podcast and to just have fun and talk sports. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Check out AnthonyVspano.com for other podcasts and interviews. Be safe.